Welcome to another conversation with Convesio. I'm your host, Mr. Lee Matthew Jackson, and on today's show, back for a second time, we have the one and only, it's Beth Hannon from AccessiCart. How are you today?
I'm great. Good to be here again.
Oh, I love having you on. We had a fantastic conversation, folks. If you missed that, there will be a link down below in the description for that conversation. But today, I believe we're going to have a bit more of a deep dive into accessibility for websites. That's either mission critical sites or for e commerce websites. And thank you very much for giving up your time. First of all, for a rapid fire round where I'd love to hit you with maybe 6 to 8 different questions
Yeah.
that people have around accessibility, the importance for their website, costs,
Mhm.
etc. And then we're going to take a look at a new service that you, AccessiCart and Convesio, have partnered together to provide people with. So, no more
Yeah.
spoilers, folks. You know what to expect. So, I mean, I don't have any cool sound effects or anything or any screens to go across, but I guess let's jump into the rapid fire round. Are you ready for this?
You've challenged me to be concise, and so now I'm
Oh, I
working on it.
know. Rapid fire. Okay, so Bet,
Okay.
let's jump in with question number one. Why is web accessibility important?
Well, it really comes down to your values, right? You wouldn't build a store and then create barriers for people to come in. And so you don't want to be the person that's creating more hurdles for other people. So accessibility is really about creating a great user experience for all your users, including your users with disabilities.
Awesome. Question number two. How does accessibility boost SEO?
So a lot of the things that you do to make your site more accessible for people with disabilities also have SEO impacts. Things like putting alt text on your images, and alt text, you shouldn't gamify that. The alt text is about the context of that image in that spot, as well as heading structures and using your headings properly. All those things impact your SEO too. So it's a win-win all around.
So, big question. Can accessibility help with conversions?
Absolutely. So, around the world, globally, all kinds of organizations like the CDC and Centers for Disease Control in the United States, but the UN, other places, estimate that about 25% of all adults have some disability that requires an accommodation. And so, if you're excluding 25% of people by not having an accessible site, then working to make that accessible can open your doors to more potential customers, more potential users. And so, you get that chance to make conversions, and then you're making it a better experience for everybody. So when you make it a better experience for people with disabilities, you're also making it a better experience for people without disabilities, and that also helps with your conversions.
You mentioned earlier blockers. What's a common blocker, an accessibility issue for people?
Yeah. So there are three really common accessibility issues. They're the top three, and that would be color contrast, having enough color difference between fonts and their backgrounds, for example. Alt text on images. We talked about that a minute ago. And then heading structures. There are estimates that say that about 80% of all accessibility issues on the web are come down to those three issues.
So, why can't I just use one of those third party accessibility widgets on my site?
Yeah. So those accessibility widgets are called overlays because they're trying to overlay on top of your site to fix accessibility issues with some JavaScript on the fly. They're highly problematic for a number of reasons. One is those kinds of solutions can only find and fix about 30% of accessibility issues. So there's a huge amount of issues that they're not going to be able to help you fix. They may be able to help you fix, for example, a little bit of color contrast by shifting your colors, but it doesn't necessarily make your site look great. But they're going to shift those colors for you. But they can't help you if your menu is not keyboard navigatable. So some issues they can help with, some they can't. But they also conflict with other tools that people with disabilities use, so rendering neither tool useful. So there are also some privacy concerns, some other ones. If you want to learn more about overlays and why they're problematic, you can go to overlayfactsheet.com, and you'll find there that over 800 accessibility professionals, including me and some others on our team, have signed that statement, indicating why overlays are a problem.
So, what are the potential costs for ignoring your due diligence with accessibility?
Mm. Yeah, so it's going to be different in different parts of the world. So in EU, UK, Canada, other nations around the world typically have a structure that deals with complaints and fines. And I'm not as familiar with all those. I do know that the fines can be quite expensive for small businesses. In the US, what we're left with is a kind of lawsuit issues. So you get sued. Typically under the Americans with Disabilities Act, that's our national law. There are some state laws that people are also sued under, and in if you would get a notice. Typically, those things are settled. So we know that there are about 4,000 cases a year that go to court, and we think that there are like 2 to 3 times as many that get settled outside of court. But minimum, you got to pay your lawyers and you got to pay the settlement. So minimum, you're looking at somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000, but typically something like 15 or 20, but it can go up very, very high. Domino's had millions of dollars, right? So depending on the size of your site. So it can be very, very large. And what people are often surprised by is that you can be sued more than once. So sometimes people will get a suit, they'll settle, they think it's all done, and then they just get hit again by the same person, even. The same person can sue them more than once.
Big question in the age of AI. Which is best, human or
Oh.
automated testing?
Well, they're both great. So automated testing is able now to do a lot of things, and you should use some automated testing as much as you can to catch that low hanging fruit. Use it. Use those tools. But you need to know that those tools, at least right now, are only finding about 30% of issues. And so you do need to think about, and they're not really very good yet at looking at that customer journey, right? So if you're on an e-commerce site, somebody needs to sort through your products and filter them and find them and put something in the cart and that sort of journey toward getting there. So maybe the AI tools will grow and get better, but there's always going to be some human element because so much of how we use websites is contextual, right? It's different on a e-commerce site than a membership site, even though you're checking out, right? So there's some differences there. So you need both.
Does making your website accessible have to cost the earth?
No, it doesn't. And so I would say the first thing to do is to think about there are a lot of those low hanging fruit kind of things we talked about. Before color contrast, alt text, heading structure. Those are all things that non technical site owner people can take care of and make sure they're doing correctly. And so taking care of a lot of that will go a long way. But it is an investment. It's not something that you that just is an easy, and I think that's the attraction of sometimes those overlay widgets is that they promise the easy thing, right? I just have to like put this little widget on there and then it's all magically disappeared. And so it is an investment and it is a kind of ongoing thing that needs to be maintained. There's never a kind of one and done kind of piece to that. So
Which leads to my last question, which literally includes the words one and done. Is accessibility a one and done project for a website?
no, it really can't be. So there are some things that are one and done. Does your for a period of time at least, right? Does your website have is your menu keyboard navigatable? So people who use screen readers who are visually impaired, but also people who have mobility impairments, they can't use a mouse. They use the keyboard to navigate. So can they get through your menu? Well, that's likely to not change until you change the theme on your site. So maybe that's good for 3 to 5 years. But a lot of things change all the time on your website. If you have an e-commerce site that's putting up new products, taking down products, changing the way that you're filtering products, you're always making tweaks and changes and improvements to your site. And even if you're not actively changing a lot on your site, just updating the plugins on your site is making code changes that may impact accessibility. And so accessibility is something that you have to be really watching over time, that you're continuing to do some checks and look at and improve.
Absolutely. Now, I do understand that accessibility can be a challenge, potentially expensive, time consuming, something that needs to be done regularly. Uh, for example, like you said, sites are updated regularly with the content, but also the technology changes. Now,
Yeah.
AccessiCart has teamed up with Convesio to help deliver a cost effective solution to this. Could you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so we've been working at AccessiCart. We've been working in accessibility for a while, and one of the things that was hard for us to watch. Traditionally, people do an audit, so
Mhm,
that's how you got work. You got help from professionals for accessibility. Was you came, you paid somebody often a lot of money to
mhm,
do a report on your site with just itemized all the issues, and we watched over and over again. Clients were just they would get overwhelmed. They would do one or two things, and then that would just go away because it was a point in time,
mhm.
right? And it was a snapshot, but then they didn't do anything, and then it just got old, and then it wasn't worth anything to them anymore. So we really started looking at how could we help them be more not get so overwhelmed, but also be working over time. And we got a
Mm,
little help or a little nudge with the U.S. Department of Justice has said they're going to start measuring website accessibility compliance. And compliance is really hard to measure. No site is 100% accessible for 100% of people with disabilities ever. And
mhm.
so, if that's true, then how do you measure compliance? Well, they're saying part of what they're going to do is measuring, do you have a regular program of accessibility feedback, testing, and remediation? And so that really gave us this idea for it really needs to be an ongoing thing. You need documented evidence that you're working at it over time. You don't have to be perfect or get perfect in 3 months, right?
Mhm.
That it's an ongoing thing that you're going to work on. And so we've developed these plans where based on your plan level, you get 1, 3, or 5 issues of accessibility issues identified for you each month. We give you unlimited support about how to fix them. We work with in-house teams, we work with agency partners. We do some accessibility on uh, on WordPress sites, WooCommerce sites too. But you're getting that documented report, and then the retesting. That's always was a hard problem too. Was that people would get the audit, but then you'd have to get another audit to make sure you got stuff fixed. And this is a lot more of a flow for that. And we're really excited to partner with Convesio about this in terms of helping their clients with mission critical sites really begin to address this as an ongoing issue for compliance and continual improvement in accessibility.
So I think what you're saying here is that compliance isn't, like we said earlier, a one and done thing. There is no
Uh-huh.
100% solution for making something accessible to everybody. I mean, I just remember looking the other day at the color contrast and the different ways that people see color. I think there were at least 8 that I saw, and there are probably many
Yeah,
more. So no matter what I pick, there are potentially going to be issues. Just as a very kind of small example. But what
yep,
I think what you're saying here is by investing in some sort of program like this, you are showing to your customers who are coming to your website that you care, and you're finding those solutions and finding those problems and putting solutions in place so that they can actually interact with your site more. But if the worst was to happen, you can also then say, hey, look, here is our documentation. This is the program that we've engaged with
yep,
over the last X months, X years, etc., with our partners here at AccessiCart, to ensure that we're doing our due diligence and making our site as accessible as possible. Therefore, you
yep,
can see the heart of the matter, and the heart of our business is that we do care. We want to make it accessible. We want to help people. We are an open book. Do talk to us. Let's make those changes, etc.
exactly.
Therefore, the court
Yep.
are going to be much more friendly to that
Well,
conversation.
we know there's at least a couple of cases of court cases where we've seen this happen, and that's it exactly, right? If when you get that complaint over a specific issue, then you just have a clear glide path avenue to say, "Great, thanks for reporting that to us. We'll just hand that off to our team to look at and test and get that fixed." Boom, boom, it's done. And then the case is called, we say, moot. Then the case is moot, it's fixed, you don't have that issue. But the court really wanted to see sort of ongoing commitment in that way, and having something that's set up, that's that external plan, gives you that evidence of commitment that's just a step above what an in-house team commitment might be,
Mm.
because those are hard, they go away right on budget cuts. It's hard to measure how much of the team is really spending time on that. So.
Well, I was also thinking that some folks may think, well, why don't I just do a big investment and do one big, massive, intensive site review, code update, get
Yeah,
everything as close as possible, which I think sounds like a very good project.
yeah,
But um, I think what I understand here as well is because the content's going to change, because plugins get updated, because server software gets updated, etc., there
yep,
are going to be potentially things over time. So even if somebody invests in something like that, which is still great, there is a need for that constant
right.
evaluation.
Right. And so doing a big investment like that may have, maybe something that you want to do if you have a lot of issues because that will help, with convert I mean you'll get yourself to a good maintenance point, right?
Mm,
That may be a project. That would be a good idea depending on the case. But it's not really required in the same way. I mean, part of what we bring, the value that we bring in these plans is that we've looked at a lot of sites. And so
mm.
we can go into a site and we can pretty quickly identify the things that are going to be blockers, the things that are going to be uh, prohibit people from buying products on your site, or right. And so we're going to help you fix those pieces because those are the things that are most frustrating for people with disabilities, right? They come to your site because they want to potentially buy something, right? So you're going to create those places where you're going to do that, but you do need to kind of be working on those things over time as well. It's just sort of being aware of them. And so we start out like typically folks might start on a 3-issue plan, and then maybe after 6 or 9 or 12 months of working on all of those issues, they get to a maintenance level where they drop down to a lower plan that continues to work at maintaining.
Well, that's actually a good point as well. So what you could do then, especially if you have a problematic site, but you don't really have the budget to invest a massive amount, uh, where you may have to fix at
Yep.
least 20 issues at the beginning, you could actually build on a higher plan, work on those over the course of a few months. So that's spreading the cost, and then obviously as you're starting to chip away, you can then start to reduce that as well. So that helps to make it
Mhm.
cost effective. And again, looking back at that kind of long-term compliance, it's showing that you as a store owner or as a website owner are doing your due diligence and looking after your duty of care to the people who are visiting your site. That's awesome. Could you
Duty of
share
care.
with
Is
us?
that a Brit?
do-
That's a British phrase, yeah. Duty of
That's
care.
very British, isn't it? Yes, indeed.
I love that.
Here,
That's great.
here I am doing an interview with Americans for an American company. They love the British. Um, so, could you share with us a success story where the service has made an impact?
Oh, actually, let's talk about Convesio. So we've been talking about these plans. We've been getting these plans going. We've been looking at things. We looked at the landing page that they were kind of starting to put together for the accessibility plans, and we said, hey, you have a color contrast issue here with this pink and white. And they went, "Oh." And I said, "You know what? Let's put you in a plan." So we get them in a plan, and we've been working on changing color contrast for them site wide on their call to action buttons. There was an issue with link text was not at first wasn't color didn't have a color contrast, and then it didn't have an underline. So link text has to have a non-color indicator, and typically that's an underline, but it could be bold, it could be, I mean, there's other indicators, but so it has to have a something besides color to set it apart. So we worked with them getting that implemented site wide. So it's been really kind of cool to have them come in, get their website team into our. We have an issue tracking dashboard, so folks on their website team are able to get in there and have some conversations with us, and we can then turn that around and get things tested and say, yeah, that's fixed. That's great. Thanks. It's been
That's
great.
awesome. And
Yeah,
obviously, I'm inside of the Convesio Slack on a daily basis, and I can also see the developers who are working on the
yeah,
output of your reports. So one of the chaps just this morning actually posted some changes that they've made because they've made a global change, I believe, across the entire site to
yep,
cover things like the very issue you mentioned about links,
yep,
which is awesome. So I've gotten to see kind of that aspect of things behind the scene and those conversations. Again, something that I, as a developer, I'm also a developer, I wouldn't necessarily think or know these things. However, having been pointed out, we can work on those sorts of things. So,
yeah.
folks, Here we are. If you are interested, there is a magical link down below in the description for you to click on where you can find out more information and you'll be able to sign up for this service should you be interested through your dashboard over on convesio.com. Bet, thank you so much for your time. Thank you again for
Uh,
those rapid fire questions. You are a legend.
oh,
And
thanks.
let's see you again in another video.
We will. I'd love to come. Thanks.
Awesome. Cheerio.